Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, back in New York after a very challenging trip to Las Vegas. Seemed like nothing went my way, and I'm actually quite happy to be home. I have a ton of stand-up all around New York City this weekend, and I can get back to my other career. Running bad is not fun, and I'm kind of in what I would consider an extended losing streak. Things haven't been going well. Online, live, tournaments, cash games, kind of across the board. I actually lost almost 12% of my total bankroll in the last 2 months. So that's not good. For those keeping score at home, that is not good. But as I mentioned last week, I have a superstitious friend who keeps telling me that I'm getting all my bad luck out of the way now so that I can have good luck in the fall. Speaking of the fall, the World Series of Poker is happening, at least as of today, August 12th, as I'm recording this, 2021. It is happening. They released the rules with very little fanfare, and some people think that the reason why they tried to slip the rules in under the radar is that there's a very strange new rule this year that basically says if a player gets excused from a tournament because of health issues, it doesn't specifically mention COVID-19, but obviously that's what they are most concerned about. That player will not be given a refund other than if the player is already in the money, whatever place that player is in at that time, that's the position that he or she will collect. So a lot of players are kind of up in arms about this, especially with the wording being something like at the Rio's absolute and total discretion. So they can basically kick anyone out for any reason, and that's it. You have no recourse. But you know what? That is the way it's always been, believe it or not. Casinos have the right to refuse your action for any reason. Now, you hear this a lot when it comes to blackjack, card counters, and things like that, where they don't really have to say the reason why we aren't going to let you play here anymore is because we think you're an advantage player, or we've noticed that you increase your bets when the count is low, that sort of thing. They don't have to say that, okay? All they really need to say is we do not desire your business anymore. And because they are gambling establishments, in most states, that's all they need to say, and they don't even have to give the player a reason. Now, this hardly ever happens. It would obviously be incredibly bad publicity, just horrible PR for the WSOP if they just started randomly kicking people out of tournaments for no reason at all. But I think they want to protect themselves against any players having a problem with being asked to leave the event because of COVID-19 symptoms, or perhaps they're going to try to institute a mask policy, and if somebody doesn't wish to follow that policy, maybe they're worried that they will have some sort of legal battle down the road. So the wording of the rules of play, the tournament rules for 2021, is extremely aggressive, and I think we understand why. They just don't want to have legal problems in the future. Also, everyone's kind of on edge over this Delta variant. As of this moment, Vegas is still on a mask mandate, and if that's still in place come October, that would really put a damper on the World Series of Poker, both from an enjoyment standpoint, as well as, in my opinion, a numbers standpoint as well. Now, personally, I will be in attendance, even if they make me wrap myself in saran wrap. If they are allowing people to play in the World Series of Poker this year, I, for one, will absolutely be there. I'm not scared of these aggressive rules, and I'm not scared of the mask mandate either. I expect to be there this fall come hell or high water, just in case my friend's right about my luck being due to turn around come the fall. And speaking of the WSOP, I got a message on Twitter from a user named Matt Ernst at Poker Conundrum. If you want to follow Matt on Twitter, give him a follow. He wrote me a nice note. It says, "Hey Clayton, thanks for putting out a great podcast. I don't miss an episode and appreciate all the content. I was rewatching old WSOP main event coverage the other day and saw some footage of you running deep. I don't play for a living, but poker is my passion and has been a huge part of my life since 2004. I work hard on my tournament game. With that said, I've played the main 3 times and have been knocked out on day 2 each time. I've had a fair amount of success in tournaments with 3-day structures, but I feel maybe there's some tweaks I could make to adjust to a structure like the WSOP main. I'll be playing it for the 4th time this November. Do you have any advice?" Okay, so first off, Matt, thank you for your kind words and thank you for messaging me on Twitter at Clayton Comic. Always love to hear from everybody, and this is one that made me happy too. I get a little nostalgic whenever they show the 2018 main event, and they show quite a few of the hands that I played on ESPN. So yeah, thanks for listening and thanks for watching and thanks for everything. Let's talk about this sample size you're bringing up that you happened to bust out on day 2 of the main event 3 times, out of playing it 3 times. This really doesn't tell us anything, Matt. I know that you know this. You've been playing poker since 2004. You're not some new player or something, but sometimes it's good to just hear it again from another person. A small sample size should not be used to try to figure things out, okay? Just because you happen to bust on day 2 the 3 times you played the main does not tell us that you're making a particular mistake or that there's something you need to do differently. I mean, honestly, without being able to see the way you played your day 1 hands and your day 2 hands in the 3 main events that you've already played, I can't really pinpoint a mistake that I'm sure you are making. So instead, I'm just going to give you and everyone else my kind of general advice for the main event, and it's as follows. If you're used to playing in short tournaments, 1 or 2 day tournaments with faster turbo structures, in those tournaments, you need to make some light calls. You need to take some coin flips. You need to take more risks. So the reason why most professional players love the main event so much is because the structure is so darn good. And by that I mean it's very, very slow. I believe you could literally fold every single hand on day 1 and make it to day 2 with something like 30 big blinds. That's how good this structure is. So I don't recommend you do that. Of course, that's not the strategy that I'm advocating for, but just keeping that in mind, that means, for example, if the GTO bots and all of your study says you're supposed to call in a certain spot, and you choose to play it safe and fold, that is a much smaller mistake in a tournament with a great structure than it is in a tournament with a fast structure. The reason for that is you're going to get other opportunities. Being patient in the main event is the most important thing, particularly on day 1. Some of your opponents will not be used to playing multi-day, 2-hour levels, like whatever. They're going to be going a little bit crazy, and maybe they're used to just, if I have an ace-king, I'm happy to get it all in. You know, but if you start with 400 big blinds or whatever it is, and you get it all in with ace-king, that's usually a mistake, right? So we know this, but some of your opponents do not. So therefore, it becomes less enticing to get it all in a coin flip situation when you have a ton of chips and 2-hour levels. So that's the key also. It's not just that I have 200, 300, 400 big blinds. It's that I'm going to have this number of chips for the foreseeable future. So that is the key. So perhaps, now again, I don't know how you play, Matt, so I'm not saying that this is the mistake that you're making, but perhaps you taking too many risks and then getting short stacked too early on day 2. But with only a sample size of 3, it could be that you played every single hand perfectly every time you've been in any main event, all 3 times you were in it, and you just happened to have the cards set up so that you would bust on day 2. Now, there are a lot of counter strategies to what I'm talking about. If you happen to be at a table where you notice most of your opponents are just trying to avoid conflict at all costs and survive day 1, I've been at certain tables that were very similar to that in my day 1 experiences, and sometimes you can end up flipping the script a little bit, and because you realize that's how everybody else is playing, it actually makes sense to be a little bit more aggressive. If they're avoiding conflict, you should present them with conflicts. So this is very general advice. For those who are planning on playing the main event for the first time this fall, first of all, here's crossing our fingers and hoping that it all happens, right? And assuming it does happen, I would recommend you get there early. You just take in the scenery, the atmosphere. You want to be whatever the opposite of overwhelmed is by the time the cards are dealt. You could sit down at your main event table and see Patrick Antonius or Daniel Negreanu or somebody else that you've watched on TV over the years, and if you're not used to being around famous players, it might freak you out a little bit. So you want to try to minimize the chances of that happening, and the way to do that is to get there early, be prepared, and just try to enjoy the experience. And that means mostly folding, keeping your headphones out, and just paying attention to what's going on around you. And I think you'll find that after a little while, whatever jitters you might have at the very beginning of the day will be out of your system in relatively short order. So I wish you the best. Thanks again for your tweet, Matt Ernst at Poker Conundrum. And if anyone else is interested in asking any questions at all about the main event or any other poker tournament you might have, just go ahead and hit me up on Twitter at Clayton Comic. Another thing I would recommend for those who are planning to play the main event is to join TournamentPokerEdge.com. It is by far the most affordable and most jam-packed website. We have a full hand history review of a couple years ago when Andrew Brokus, who in my opinion is one of the top poker coaches on the planet, he's also written 2 books on the subject, and he makes videos for TPE all the time. Check out his series where he basically does an every hand revealed recap of his deep run. I think he finished in the top 100 in the main event, I believe 2019. So definitely check that out. And I have some news for you guys. If you're not yet a member of Tournament Poker Edge, there has never been a better time to join, because as a podcast listener, you are now entitled to $10 off your first month. Now, look, guys, this site is already unbelievably affordable, but if you enter the coupon code, is it a coupon code or a promo code? Anyway, podcast, all caps, PODCAST, podcast, and you will automatically receive $10 off your first month of membership. So join now. You'll be glad you did. Thank me later. Okay, next I would like to update you guys on a story that I presented a week or 2 ago about Scott Robbins. Now, this is the gentleman who is suing the Borgata after he was banned for life from entering the Borgata as a result of some kind of comment that he made at check-in about a high floor and if he has to jump, etc. Well, I actually heard from the man himself, okay, as I've been going through my Twitter DMs. I have one from Scott Robbins, and he says, "Hi Clayton, somebody told me you were talking about what happened with me at the Borgata, and I started to listen to it. You started the podcast by saying that I told them I would prefer a higher floor in case I want to jump. What you said could not be further from the truth. I said no such thing," etc. He basically was offended by the way that I presented his story here on the podcast. Now listen, guys, I'm not a journalist. I don't have press credentials or whatever. But that said, when I share a news story, I check my sources, and this story had been confirmed by PokerNews.com, which I consider a very reputable source. That said, if this gentleman was upset with me, I decided to invite him to come on to the podcast and give us his side of the story so that we can hear it in his own words. And guess what? He accepted. So without further ado, here's my exclusive interview with Scott Robbins. First off, thank you for being on the program. And I want to apologize right off the bat because I got a response from you through the miracle of the internet. We were able to you're able to get in touch with people who mentioned your name on their podcasts, and apparently you took exception to something that I had said about you 2 weeks ago on this podcast. I talked about how you are suing the Borgata in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I mentioned some details that you say I got wrong from your court case. So why don't we, first of all, please accept my apology, and I wanted to give you a forum to clarify what really happened that day.
My pleasure. Yeah, I mean, the internet, it's ironic that that's how I reach you, of course, where so many are just trashing my name online who either have played with me in the past or just decided to take whatever information they're provided, whether it be correct or incorrect, and run with it. So, I mean, it's a pretty simple story. I had gone there a couple of days before the main event for one of their series. I forget which one it was. And the main event was $3,500 to enter. I had driven there, stayed in an Airbnb the night before, satellited in, had every chip on the table. So I won a seat to the main. I then had 2 complimentary nights at the Borgata, reserved. I showed up at the front desk. I chose to play the second day one, so it gave me an opportunity to just rest and relax, go to the pool. Everything was great. I was feeling great, playing at the top of my game. I went to the front desk. There was a girl working there. I don't remember, because it didn't really faze me at the time, what her ethnicity was, but I know that she wasn't from America. She wasn't born here. So it wasn't her first language, and I know that their job is monotonous. They just sit there and check in people, hundreds of people every day. So I lightheartedly asked her, well, she asked if I had a preference for a low floor or a high floor. And I simply said to her, if I had to jump, would I survive from the high floor? And she said, no, don't jump. And I said, no, I'm not going to jump. But what I should have said, in retrospect, of course, was if there was an earthquake or a fire or some natural act of God and I was forced to jump, would I survive? But we all know, everybody at the front desk, anybody with a brain knows that anybody who jumps from any floor at that hotel or any hotel of that height is never going to survive. In any case, I followed it up with, well, if you give me a room on the low floor and I had to jump, would I survive? And she said, no, don't jump. And I said, I'm not going to. The lady next to her at the other kiosk or whatever, the computer, smiled and chuckled. She knew I was asking a lighthearted question and just whatever. In any case, the girl gives me a key to the 30th floor. I go upstairs. I pick up the phone and ask housekeeping to bring me 2 feather pillows if they would. She said, no problem, Mr. Robbins. We'll be there in 10 minutes. Within 5 minutes, there's a knock on my door. I open the door. There's 2 state police, 2 EMTs, and 3 security people. Mr. Robbins, can I speak with you? I said, sure, what's going on? So instantly in my brain, I'm thinking, did I hit someone in my car? Did I run somebody over and not know it? What's going on? I had no idea. And then one of the police officers said to me, is everything okay? Are you feeling okay? I said, I'm feeling great. What's going on? Well, we need to talk to you about what was said downstairs. And I said, oh, God. And I knew instantly. So then they asked me 100 questions to determine my state of health. I said, no, everything's great. I'm just relaxing. I'm playing the main event tomorrow. And they had already determined in their mind that they were going to kick me out. They then said, you had to leave the hotel. I said, okay, I'm playing the main event. Can I still play? The head of security, who was a woman, said, I don't know yet. We'll get back to you on that. But you can't stay in this hotel. I said, okay. So I went to grab my luggage, and I can't remember who of the people, whether it was the cops, the EMTs, or the security, but one of them said, you aren't going anywhere. You need to go to the hospital. I said, you've got to be kidding me. They put me on a gurney, rolled me through the casino and hotel, where certainly people who play poker saw me and then put me in an ambulance and brought me to the loony bin where I had to sit for hours. And then the nurse, who was a male, called one of my friends to find out if I was suicidal. We were hysterically laughing on the phone at how foolish it was. The nurse was laughing as well. And then when the doctor ultimately came in, she had asked me a few questions. She knew it was an absolutely absurd accusation that I was suicidal in any way. She wrote on the piece of paper, "Patient is not a threat to himself or anybody else. He may suffer from an awkward sense of humor." I said to the doctor, "Touche." We both laughed, and I Ubered back to the Borgata, where I delivered the letter, the piece of paper that said that I was fine, and they said, "You're gone forever." At that time, the two security guards that were involved in the entire interaction said, "Listen, if it was up to me, you would not be banned at all. And you know what, based on what happened here, just here's the phone number, here's the guy who's responsible for letting you back in. Just call him. I'm sure he'll let you back in a couple of days." That was how it was left. I was left with bills for an ambulance, hospital evaluation, and everywhere I went, the word had gotten out that I was suicidal. I go to Baltimore, Maryland. I sit down at the table, and someone mentioned something, and I said that was me. They said, "Oh, my God, it was you? You want to kill yourself?" And I just shook my head and thought, you've got to be kidding me. That's it.
Wow. So 7 people come to your room. They tell you
2, 3. Yep.
They tell you you have to go to the hospital, but
Yep.
then you have to pay those hospital bills yourself.
Oh, yeah, everything. Sure. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
do you regret making that joke? I mean, obviously the joke didn't land. I know
Well, it
from
really wasn't a
experience,
joke.
comedy is hard. So
Yeah, it's not a joke. It was just a lighthearted comment. It wasn't a joke. A joke would have been different, or a suicide threat would have been different. It wasn't anything. It was just a lighthearted comment. Do I regret it? Obviously. Never say the word jump anywhere within 1,000,000 miles of a hotel. That's what I learned. But in the context, anybody who, say, grew up in this country would have known. I was just asking a lighthearted question. It was not, I'm considering jumping. Jumping is a good idea. None of those things. And then when I hear on the internet, not just you, or I read on 2+2 forums what people are writing, it's absurd. It's beyond comprehension what people feel they have the license to say and write.
give me an example there, Scott. What are you talking about?
This guy's definitely suicidal. I've played with him before. Or you should consider killing yourself if you weren't. Or in your case, where you had mentioned that I asked for a high floor because I was considering jumping. All of these things are just ludicrous. They're not even close to what actually transpired.
Well, to be clear, I often ask for a high floor myself when I go to any hotel because I like being up high and I like having a nice view. And I didn't say that the reason why you asked for a high floor, not on this podcast or anywhere else, did I say that you wanted to jump or that you were considering jumping.
Then it was somebody else. I
Okay,
apologize.
yeah, no, but you don't want to be misquoted, and neither do I.
No.
Right?
No, exactly.
But yeah, all I was doing, your story made it to Poker News, which is where I found it, and I was sharing the details of the story that were shared by Poker News.
Yes,
but
yes.
When you reached out to me, I immediately said, you know what, this man has given me a chance to let people hear it from the horse's mouth, his side of the story. So, yeah, I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that here. So, tell us what's going on with your case. I mean, is there any movement on this case so far?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an attorney. My attorney has not mentioned to me whether I should or shouldn't say anything, and I don't want to get myself in trouble. But what I will say is, from what I've been told from my attorney, Borgata would like to settle this out of court. And their offers have been absurd so far. Maybe that'll change. But they want to settle it, and my attorney has mentioned to them that, it's all over the internet. There's articles in Brazil and Spain and Germany and all over the internet about this. I mean, there's like 100 articles, most of which are incorrect, like the one in Poker News, where there's some facts are correct, some are not. But all the information was derived from a court document. So these journalists, and I use air quotes, read the lawsuit, and then they just make up their own information. So that's where it stands right now. I'd like for me to not be banned. I mean, they either ban me because they truly do believe I'm a suicide threat, or they believe I'm not. I've never caused a problem there. I've only been there twice in my entire life, for 2 days total, and so they can't really. I don't think that it's right for them to use that as a bargaining chip in a lawsuit. I think they should either ban me because they think I'm a threat, or don't ban me. And
well, I'd like to know what happened with your satellite, Scott. I mean, it sounds like you won a satellite, so you were supposed to be allowed to play in this $3,500 main event, and you never made it to your day one, right?
Correct. So I said to them, all right, am I going to get the $3,500 in cash then? And they said no, because it's in the prize pool. And then I said, am I going to get my $400 back for the satellite? No, with no explanation. So that was it. Yeah. I mean, I was ready to go. I was ready to go. I mean, drove to New Jersey from Massachusetts. I was ready to play in the main.
Wow. Well, I mean, I can see why this story is being shared around the world because, there's just a lot of interesting factors to it. Obviously, we don't have a representative from the Borgata here to tell us their side of the story.
Yeah.
But since you felt there was a discrepancy between what I had reported and the truth, I just wanted to give you a platform here and just give you a chance to clear things up for my listeners and for listeners to this podcast. So is there anything else you want people to know that you would like to get out there?
No, that's fine. I very much appreciate you giving me the opportunity to state what actually occurred. There are no videos, audio, or any other interpretation that could be given to what had occurred. That is verbatim exactly what occurred. Now, whether that wins in a court of law or whether they want to settle with a reasonable number, I don't know. But no, there's nothing more. I mean, I'm just a grinder. I play tournaments. I've been fairly prosperous in the last few years. I mean, I started playing tournaments in 2018. I've been a cash grinder forever. I did really well. And then I couldn't play, of course, through COVID. So there was a year of no tournaments. But in a short period of time, I've done pretty well. And I just wanted an opportunity to do well there. But it never happened.
Right. Okay, well, we really appreciate your taking the time to share your side of the story with us, and we'll certainly be following your case, however it ends up settling out going forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so that was Scott Robbins. He is the plaintiff in a lawsuit against MGM Properties and the Borgata in Atlantic City.
So there you have it, guys. Pretty interesting conversation, if you ask me, and it should be equally interesting to see how things shake out for Scott. Anybody that wants to be a guest on the podcast, all you have to do is sue a major casino for $1 million, and I'll probably have you on to talk. All right, well, for our strategy segment today, I want to stick with the theme of going through my Twitter DMs. I received a message from a long-time listener, first-time caller. His words, not mine. I love that old school jump off. First time, long time. His name is Ben Hansen, at Ben D. Hansen on Twitter. And he played in a $500 buy-in 2-day tournament at Canterbury Park, which is somewhere in Minnesota. I've never played poker in Minnesota, but I've heard that there is some pretty fine action up there. Maybe one of these days I'll make it to Minnesota. But anyway, Ben said he had a couple of spots that he wanted to talk about from this tournament. They're both from very late in day 2. So we are down to 11 players, and Ben is at the table that has 6 players remaining. The other table has 5 players remaining. Now there are serious pay jumps to consider here, and Ben has $850,000 in chips, which it appears to me is right around average at the moment. The blinds are 20K and 40K with a 40K big blind ante. So that means there is 100,000, in the middle, and we only have $850,000 in our stack. So that means our M is 8.5 and we have 21 big blinds. So here's the action. Think about what you would do in Ben's situation. The cutoff raises to 85K off of a 600K stack. Remember, we have 850, so we have that player covered. And then the hijack raises all in for 505 all in. I think that he's got these positions mixed up, so it sounds to me like the hijack would have been first to raise and then the cutoff, but it doesn't matter. Basically, the two players on his right have raised, and now the action is on Ben holding pocket jacks. So the action's on us, and now there's already 85 plus 85 plus 100. That's 270,000 in the middle, and we only have 850 in our stack. Also, the second player, the cutoff, is all in, and the first player doesn't have much more than that. So it's basically, do we want to get into a three-way all in this part of the tournament holding pocket jacks? All right, now here's the information I wish Ben had shared. What kind of playing style do these players have? Very late in the tournament. Right now, the pay jumps are as follows. 11th place pays $3,200, and first place pays like $47,000. So it's a huge difference. So I can understand the natural human tendency to think in terms of wanting to survive, wanting to, just hang around for a while. The reason I don't like that kind of thinking at this stage of the tournament is because, number one, I always play for first place. I don't care about laddering up to like 9th place or whatever, whatever the case may be. I'm all about that $47,000, especially for my $500 buy-in. I mean, that is the kind of return on investment that makes me want to go to casinos and play some poker tournaments. I mean, that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned. But even if that's not the way you feel, can we fold our jacks? Would you fold your jacks? I mean, there's already essentially a raise and an all-in, and if the first raiser is going to call the all-in, he may as well go all-in as well. So what could happen is if we go all-in here, the original raiser, the hijack, with his 600-some thousand, can just fold and say, all right, well, I was actually trying to steal the blinds. I'm not that interested in this pot. Keep my 85 and you boys have fun. And then we're basically going up against the type of hand that would 3-bet shove with 500 and 5,000 in his stack. So what kind of hand is that? Well, guys, I mean, his M is 5. The guy has no chips. He's got like 12 bigs, right? So he doesn't need to have a monster. Now, if you tell me that the player in the cutoff is the type that would never, ever, ever shove his short stack all in this situation unless he had a monster hand, then and only then could I even consider throwing away my jacks. To me, this is an automatic shove, and the reason we don't call is because it's just silly to call. You may as well shove and try to get everything in the middle right now when you have your jacks. And also you may inspire the original raiser to fold some hands that have equity against ours, like ace queen, right? If he can fold ace queen, I would be thrilled, because that's a flip. And we don't want to flip. We want to try to force him out. And I don't know. I mean, in his shoes, with ace queen, the short stack's all in, and now Clayton, who actually has me covered, is shoving. I might actually have to fold the ace queen myself in his shoes. But I think from the button here with the jacks, calling is unforgivable. Folding is moderately defensible, especially if you have bankroll considerations or something that make you want to ladder up. Like if 7th place money is going to change your life or something, then I can understand, although I don't agree. And to me, this is an automatic all in. When my M is 8.5, I'm usually not folding jacks under any circumstances. So let's get it in and see what happens. So let's see what Ben did. Oh, okay. It says here, with both blinds covering me and still to act. Okay, so, all right. So let's look at that. It is possible, but not likely, that after all this action, one of the players in the blinds could wake up with a hand that has us crushed, like aces, kings, or queens. Actually, those are the only three possible hands. There's a very small chance of that, and if that's how I'm going to bust out of this tournament, so be it. You know, I want to get all in here with my jacks, and I will fade the possibility that somebody in the blinds will wake up. Even if I happen to lose to either of these players, I'm still going to have some chips, and when the blinds are this big, there's always a chance that you can come back and win the whole tournament anyway. Bottom line, guys, I think jacks is too strong. So, do you agree? But without more information about the two players who have already entered the pot, I don't see how we can throw our jacks away. So, he goes on to say, and while I was most likely ahead of both the original Razor and the 3-better, I didn't feel like flipping and ending up with a 6 to 8 big blind stack if I was wrong or got unlucky. All right, so let's talk about that, guys. If you're not willing to take a coin flip when your M is 8.5, when are you willing to take a coin flip? I mean, you said right here you think you're ahead of their ranges. So if that's the case, then you should be thrilled to pick up jacks in this spot and put it all in. All right, it looks like Ben's folding here. Let me keep reading. I didn't feel like flipping. Yeah, he did fold. I think I made the right decision. Well, I don't, Ben. If you're telling us that you think you're ahead of their ranges, then you should be getting it all in. Look, guys, poker is a gambling game, and jacks are especially good to have against a flip, right? Because ace, king, ace, queen, some of their value comes from their ability to make a straight. And it's very, very hard for those hands to make a straight when we have two of the jacks. So even though we still call it a flip, just for shorthand, the jacks are actually a pretty substantial favorite, to the tune of 57%, kind of depending on the suits, of course, but about 57% against ace king. So that's a great spot to be in, and you really want to push those edges, because look, even if you're the best player at the table, the best player remaining in the tournament, your M is 8.5. That gives you like no maneuverability. So let's get in and see what we're flipping against, or more likely dominating. So let's keep reading here. It says, I think I made the right decision, but when the rest of the table folded, the original Razor called with pocket 10s, and the 3-better tabled pocket 7s. All right. Oh man, yeah, I would be kicking myself a little bit, after seeing those results. But even if the original Razor or the 3-better ends up having aces, kings, or queens, which importantly we do not block, right? Or if one of the blinds wakes up with one of those hands, for me it's time to gamble. M of 8.5. It feels like the tournament is kind of getting to the point where we need to take a flip. Now I can understand when players say, like on the first hand of the main event, I don't want to take a flip, right? I get that. I don't either. But when my M is that low and I have 20 big blinds, I'm looking for a flip. Okay, if we win this flip, and as it turns out it's not even a flip, you actually have both of these hands crushed. If we get it all in and win, we're going to be chip leader in the tournament. And all we have to do to get there is beat 10s and 7s with jacks. Sign me up every time. I want that. I wanted the coin flip, in quotation marks, because it's actually about 57%. So I definitely want this spot. And given that these are the types of hands that players have, and actually should have when their stacks are this short, I would be fist pumping, getting it in, and whatever happens, happens. It's time to gamble to have a stack for the final table. So, thoughts on this one? Is this a fist pump, get it in? Yes, I just said that actually. Or kind of gross and live to fight another day? No, I think that when we have 8s, this is a tough decision. I think that when we have 9s, this is like the borderline for me. But if I had ace king, probably ace queen, certainly ace queen suited, and tens and jacks and better, I'm definitely getting it all in with these stack sizes. All right, so let's go on. Ben also shared another hand. This one is from the final table, like very soon after the final table started. And at this point, Ben has the table chip lead with 2.25 million and 50 blinds with a 50 big blind ante. So what the heck does Clayton know? He folded his jacks and somehow ended up with the chip lead at the final table anyway. So that's kind of interesting. So I guess he picked up some other hands and found an even better spot than the one he just told us about. Okay, so here we go. So it's 25, 50, and 50. So that means there's 125,000 in the middle, and we have 2.25 million in chips, which means our M is just under 20. Now this is the kind of stack I like to play at a final table. We're the chip leader. We've got plenty of chips, and we don't really have to get too involved in too many situations if we don't want to. All right, so here's the action. The middle position player open limps, and he's got about 1.7 million. Okay, first off, this really makes me want to go to Minnesota. If you're limping in for middle position at a final table where first place is $47,000, when can I book my next flight to Minnesota? This is a terrible play by the middle position player, regardless of his holding, in my opinion. All right, so the action folds all the way to us in the big blind with pocket aces. All right, so I want to raise kind of big here. Middle position is very likely to have a pair. I find that players who do choose to limp in from middle position tend to have small to medium pairs a lot, and those kinds of hands are pretty hard to fold for many of our opponents who have trouble with getting optimistic and wanting to flop a set all the time. So I would probably make it, let's see, there's already 175 in the middle. Yeah, I would make it 300,000 here, especially he's got 1.7 behind. I think he'll feel like he can call that a lot with that small to medium pair and hope to flop a set against us. But if he folds, it's actually not the end of the world because there's plenty in the middle already. Now, obviously, I want the action when I have aces, but I don't want to make it too enticing for him. I want him to make a bigger mistake when he calls. So I would make basically a pot-sized raise to 300,000. So let's see what Ben does. It looks like Ben made it 225. You know what? That's fine. You're almost certainly going to get called there, so that's also fine. You're going to create a pretty favorable SPR. If you make it 225 and he calls, there's going to be about, okay, yeah, it's right here, 575 in the pot, and our opponent has about 1.7 million behind. So, all right, fine. Looks like he started the hand with 1.9, but yeah, still, I would have raised it to 300. Yeah, this type of SPR between 3 and 4 is not ideal for when you have one pair and are very likely to still have one pair on the river. You will often get put to the test, especially by good players, but even bad players can occasionally find spots to bluff us, etc. So yeah, I would rather have made that bigger raise and gotten that SPR down a little closer to 3. But, this is a minor mistake. We just have to kind of be aware of our opponent's playing style enough to know if he happens to put the heat on, whether these are the kind of aces we can throw away. Short of that, we need to basically go with just, board texture and combinatorics. So the flop comes 8 of clubs, 5 of clubs, tray of diamonds. Okay, this is an above average flop for pocket aces. We're loving this overpair situation. The only thing we're actually concerned about is a set. So we've got the ace of diamonds, ace of spades, and there are 2 clubs on the board. Hero here leads for $250,000, and middle position rips it in for $1.7 million. And now it's noted here that we were chip leader and this opponent was second in chips. All right, this is what I call a gross spot. Honestly, I don't want to fold. My first instinct is to call. There is some chance he's got a big pair like pocket kings, pocket queens that limped in and then decided to slow play for whatever reason. I mean, you do see that sometimes. It's rare, but there's some chance. Obviously, we're worried about the three possible sets, but sets are rare. And this opponent has an M of like 16, 17, something like that to start the hand. So I'm not looking to fold this giant overpair against his range, especially when he could just have ace 8, right? He could have pocket 9s and love it. So yeah, I'm not going to worry about a set. It is awful to go from chip leader with 9 players remaining to short stack with 9 players remaining and lose a huge pot at the final table, very early at the final table with pocket aces. But this is part of what we have to do. Now, if you told me this guy never bluffs, he's not bluffing, there's no chance he's bluffing, I looked at him and his body language was super strong and I just believed him, maybe you can talk me into folding my aces. But with the information we have so far, I don't want to do that. All right, so here Ben continues. I took a couple minutes with this one, tried to get him to talk a little since I hadn't played with him at all. To me, the limp call smelled like a flopped set. Okay, Ben, with all due respect, to me that smells like monsters under the bed thinking. If he's got a set, he's got a set. We're not going to put him on that. Also, I don't know that he would necessarily want to end the hand. Yeah, maybe he could be a little worried that you have a flush draw, but I don't think so. I think that if I had a set in villain shoes, I would want to milk you. I would either check raise small or just check call and hope that you bet your aces again on the turn. Now, that's just me. There are some players that worry about everything, and it's a somewhat wet board with the 2 clubs and several possible straight draws out there. But how many of those straight draws do we have when we 3-bet from the big blind, or rather raised after a limper from the big blind? I don't think we have too much 7-6, 4-deuce kind of hands. So he can discount all of that somewhat and not worry too much about being up against a draw when he has a set. I mean, the key is when you have a big hand and it's not early on day one of a 7-day main event type of tournament, you don't usually want to fold your big hands, right? So let's keep reading here. He wanted to end it on the flop with the flush draw. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I got him to agree to fold face up if I folded. Okay, now, I like this part, Ben. I'm going to give you some credit here. I feel like I'm beating you up too much. I like you wanting to talk to your opponent and try to get a read. You strike me as a player that maybe doesn't have a ton of experience doing so, and forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but I do get the sense that you were getting information and maybe not really sure what to do with it. So if you were able to, as you say, talk him into folding face up, if you folded, doesn't that indicate, absent any other evidence, that your opponent actually wants you to fold? I mean, he's basically making you a deal. You say, will you show if I fold? And he says, yes. To me, that means, yes, I do want you to fold. I mean, unless it's a really experienced player that knows how to handle himself at the final table and is able to kind of reverse tell on you and get you to think that he's trying to get you to fold, but he actually wants you to call, yada, 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 then I would assume that what he's saying here is true. He wants to show you his hand and he wants you to fold so that he can show you his hand. I mean, if a player says, I'm willing to show my hand, that might be an indication that he wants you to fold. That's all I'm saying. Of course, the better the player, the harder it is to make that hard and fast rule. But remember, this is the guy who limped in for middle position. So it's unlikely that he's doing a reverse tell sort of Jedi mind trick here. Probably he wants you to fold because he's got 2 clubs in his hand. All right, so I got him to agree fold face up if I folded. Well, he won't actually be folding, right? He'll just be showing his cards if you fold. And he showed King of Diamonds, 9 of Hearts for a complete bluff. Wow. I mean, that is really compelling evidence that I should get a plane ticket to Minnesota ASAP. I mean, this is a wild and crazy, ridiculous play by the second chip leader in a tournament where, again, first prize is $47,000. I don't get it. Wow. I mean, why would he do that? I'm not going to beat you up any further, Ben. I appreciate your sending your hand in. I don't agree with either of these laydowns and would not recommend making them again in the future. Of course, next time you're in that same spot, you're going to think of me and think of this podcast and think of how you maybe lost out on your shot at the big prize there, and the guy will have a set, and then you're going to curse my name until the day you die. And that's just the way these things go. But, yeah, I would not have folded. At that point, I didn't want to go from table chip leader to life support, but after seeing his hand tabled, it makes me reassess my decision. Process-oriented, I think I made the right play. Okay, Ben, I respectfully disagree with that. I struggle with this one as well. Okay, yeah, process-oriented, I think that when your M is 8.5, you should be pretty happy to get it all in with your jacks. And I think that when you know that your opponent is not very good at the pokers, and he limps in and then makes this ridiculous huge shove, if he's got aces beat there, so be it. Let's go. I thought the best he could have might be a couple of clubs. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for hitting me up on Twitter at Clayton Comic. Don't forget our brand new promo code for podcast listeners to save $10 on your first month as a TPE member. Visit tournamentpokeredge.com and use the promo code PODCAST, all caps, PODCAST. So for everyone here at TPE, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun.